Hello and welcome to Not Made in China, the podcast sharing unfiltered conversations about adoption and the beautiful madness that comes with it. I'm your host, Shaosheen, and today I'm joined by Addy, a friend and fellow Chinese adoptee. In this episode, we sit down to compare our experiences growing up in different countries, Addy in the US and me in the UK, exploring what being Chinese means to us, how Western culture has shaped our identities, and how we connect with our Chinese heritage today. Anyway, we've got a lot to talk about, so let's get into it. And I hope you enjoy eavesdropping on our conversation. Addy, thank you so much for joining me, and welcome to Not Made in China.
Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure.
So to start with, I'd love it if you could share a little bit about your background, so where you were born and when you were adopted.
Right, so I was born in Hunan, and I was born in 2004, and I was adopted from Changsha.
Amazing. And growing up, were your family quite open about adoption and talking about that with you?
The most open possible. Growing up, people were always asked me, how did you know? And it's kind of obvious because, white mom. But she always made sure that it was normal, that I always knew. And it just was natural that way.
That's so great. And why was that important to you?
It was important because it made me comfortable in myself, and it made me comfortable in the love that my family gave me. And understand it more.
And when you say it makes you more comfortable in yourself, do you mean kind of embracing your Chineseness?
Trying to embrace my Chineseness without forcing it, in a way. Just acknowledging it also is how I've gone about it in other ways. I also do like to say that I am more involved. Just acknowledging it can be a good way to go about it for other people. But for me, it's been back and forth. We'll go more on about that.
Yeah, I can imagine it's been quite like an up and down, or it's never really a sort of straight upward trajectory when it comes to reconnecting with your Chinese self, I suppose.
It's not linear, I fear.
Definitely not. I mean, do you have any kind of early memories of how you felt about being Chinese?
Well, I had the blessing of living in Beijing until I was 5 years old because my mom actually had a job there.
Nice.
So she made sure that we had every opportunity to be exposed to Chinese culture at our own whim and will, pretty much. And I remember seeing the streets, smelling the smells. I don't know how to describe it, but I remember speaking the language more than English, actually. That quickly changed when I moved to the US in 2010.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you were in Beijing, did you feel very connected to the Chinese side of yourself, perhaps more than the US side of yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know the US side of myself. The US side of myself was my mom and my grandparents on FaceTime. That was pretty much the American side. But in the Chinese part of myself, it was just home. It was natural.
Well, that's great. It's lovely that it's just normal and you don't feel like you stand out or have to really make an effort to fit in.
No, I didn't, thankfully.
And I mean, you pretty much answered this already. Did you feel like you saw yourself represented in the world around you growing up? And that could perhaps, I mean, I can imagine that must have changed going from living in China to then moving to America.
Yeah, so I guess the privilege of having the life that I have also was when I moved to America, I moved to New York. They have a massive Chinese population there. So my mom also made sure that we were exposed to all sorts of opportunities and people and culture and music and food and all these different things that made us feel comfortable in ourselves.
And when you were in New York, where did you see yourself? Would that be in the communities around you, in schools?
No, definitely. So in school, definitely. There were a lot of East Asians in my grade school and middle school, which I guess is grade school. And then in high school, I went to a Chinese immersion high school.
That's cool.
So we were pretty much specifically Chinese. There were other kids there of different ethnicities. I felt very represented in pretty much all phases of my life.
For anyone who doesn't know what a Chinese immersion school is, could you give them a bit of an overview?
Yeah, so essentially it's for people who want to learn Chinese who speak English. So I speak English, obviously, and I was trying to learn Chinese, whereas the other kids there spoke Chinese but wanted to learn English. So it was like this exchange within one institution, which was my school.
That's so interesting. And did you find a lot of the other people who were learning Chinese were adoptees?
Yes, one of my really good friends from home, she was also adopted around the same time I was, but from a different province. It was really nice to meet other people there. My sister also, who went to a different high school, she also had the same experience where she met other Chinese adoptees.
That's so great.
Yeah.
And I mean, I was going to, again, you kind of answered it already, but do you still have friends who are adopted from China to this day?
Yes, definitely. We do. And we also have been friends with this fellow single mother and another Chinese adoptee since I was adopted, because her daughter was born and adopted from the same province. So our moms met through blogs in the early to mid 2000s, and we've known each other since.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
It must be
Great.
lovely to have those connections and then to have friends who look like you, have a similar background to you.
Yeah.
But then you don't necessarily have to talk about it. You guys just,
No.
you just get it.
Yeah, we just know.
And in school, so I can imagine you had Chinese teachers. Do you think having adult role models who were Chinese made a difference to you when it came to kind of having that sense of Chineseness or sense of identity?
Yeah, definitely. I think it was a bit of a challenge trying to figure out that balance between, especially in high school, with Chinese teachers, because they were basically born and raised in China. They went through the Chinese schooling system, and it's very different from the US system and probably from the UK system.
In what ways?
I think it's just a bit more rigorous, or a lot more rigorous. I think it's very strict. But I think having those role models and trying to see them and seeing the American ones, trying to see that balance. And it inspired some of that balance to happen in my life too.
It's interesting you talk about balance. So do you mean about balancing the Chinese side of yourself and the American side of yourself?
Yeah. And I think balance is kind of an awkward word because I think it implies 50-50. To be honest, even if I were, I don't know, 95%, if I identified 95% American and 5% Chinese, I'd be okay. Or if it were the other way around. When I say balance, I mean explore and really try to answer my own questions, including what does it mean to be Chinese? What does it mean to me specifically?
I love that. I think it definitely goes to show that identity isn't a sort of set figure, it's not a set number or 50-50 thing. And it sounds, especially as you've lived in China, lived in America, lived in such multicultural environments, that percentage and balance must have just changed and fluctuated throughout your life and probably will continue to do so as you get older.
No, and I think that like fluctuation it makes me who I am. It's very constructive of my identity, which I appreciate.
And I'd be interested to know how your parents celebrated your Chineseness. I know by living in Beijing, I mean, that's a huge thing in sending you to a Chinese immersion school. That's a huge thing as well. But was there anything else kind of day to day that they did?
So my mom always made sure that we had access to Mandarin learning to celebrate Lunar New Year. To have Chinese adoptees and Chinese adults around us. And she always made sure that no matter what, that we wouldn't feel like alienated because of being Chinese within our own family, with like outside of our family. She always made sure that you can embrace the Chinese part however you want to. And luckily for me, I was very curious, and I still am a very curious person.
I think so many adoptees can wrestle with that feeling of, am I Chinese enough? And is that something that you've ever had to contend with?
Almost every day, Shaosheen, almost every day. It's difficult to sometimes accept the realities of the expectations and pressures I put on myself. And I think as I've gotten older and as I've met more people like you and talked to them, I really understand that it's okay to not feel Chinese enough as long as you're not putting pressure on yourself or you're not making these standards that don't really, at the end of the day, change who I am, who you are. And so, yes, I struggle with that still. But I think as long as there's a healthy relationship with it, I think it's constructive, yet again.
And are there any particular moments that you remember feeling not Chinese enough?
I go to Queen Mary's, and there's a very large mainland Chinese population. And in the student accommodation that I live in, it's got to be like over 50% mainland Chinese. And sometimes when I hold the door for them, they say like 谢谢. And I'm like, I don't really know. I know how to answer, but it's like, oh, they'll know.
Interesting.
And I honestly think, so what if they know, you know? But sometimes it makes me feel when I'm struggling or when I'm kind of on the spot, it makes me feel, oh, perhaps I'm not Chinese enough. It's never been a harmful feeling, or at least that time has never made me feel ashamed or anything. It's just kind of made me feel, that could be me one day, or it couldn't. It depends on how I go about it, but it's my choice.
I think it's interesting as well, because I think your pronunciation to me sounds so perfect. And actually, from me looking and hearing you say that, I'll think, oh my God, like my Chinese accent or my Mandarin accent is diabolical compared to yours. So I'll look at you and go, oh my goodness, like she's got it all figured out. Like you, to me, you are kind of this, again, imaginary standard of Chinese or real Chinese that I'd set for myself. But then even for you, I'd look at you and go, well, she's got it. But then you might look at other people and think, well, they've got it.
I don't got it.
So, and like no one, where have these standards come from? It's a really interesting thing to think
genuinely.
about.
I need to be calmer about it though.
And do you think going to school with lots of other people from mainland China, did that make you put a bit more pressure on yourself to compare, or did it just encourage you to embrace your own version of being Chinese?
I think initially it made me feel more pressured. And in my high school as well, it made me feel like, oh, I should go talk to them, or I should try to be friends with them. But when there's a language barrier and when there's a cultural barrier as well, it can't be forced. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't intermingle, with each other. But I think now I see it as it's okay. It's okay. I do myself, they do them. We do ourselves. And every once in a while we interact, and I think that's refreshing.
It's great that you're just so open to exploring your identity and who you are, and you're not kind of setting these rigid parameters for yourself going, okay, in order to be a real authentic Chinese person, I must tick X, Y, and Z boxes. And it's also lovely to hear that you're so aware that you kind of did put that, might have put a bit more pressure on yourself at some point, and you might have gone through those feelings of not quite feeling Chinese enough, but now it seems like you can kind of embrace it in whatever way you want, and that sounds like a really good place to be in. And out of interest, have there ever been any moments where you suddenly realised that your adoption or identity was affecting you more than you might have realised?
I think as I've grown up, it's made me wonder about the reasons why I was, meaning like the political setting or perhaps more individual circumstances that my birth family were in. When I was younger, I guess I just didn't think it was during the one-child policy. It was during all of these different changes politically, socially, and economically in China. And identity-wise, if I'm going to speak about that, it makes me wonder again how my language acquisition journey is going to go in the future, and if I'll be able to speak it fluently.
When you said you'd be interested to know kind of more details around the context of your adoption, have you had a chance to kind of look into that and really look into the sort of political climate at that time, or perhaps look into the other reasons why your birth parents might not have been able to look after you?
I was in Chinese class and we were talking about propaganda for the one-child policy. And last semester I was learning about post-socialist intimacies. And so we were learning kind of like the aftermath of the Cultural Revolution and the Great Leap Forward. And actually the Great Leap Forward happened and then the Cultural Revolution, technically speaking. But it put in more context for me as to how I may have ended up here.
And do you think having a bit more of that context has helped you feel a bit more grounded in your identity?
Yeah, and definitely. It was never out of hatred or sadness. It was, I think I'd like to think of myself as someone who's just genuinely curious.
Yeah.
Pretty pragmatic about it, which I think in some ways some adoptees have to be.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting you say some adoptees feel like they have to be pretty pragmatic about it. Yeah. Can I ask why you think that?
I think maybe not have to be. I think a lot of adoptees naturally are. I know my sister is. We're not biologically related, but we were adopted by the same American. And my friend who I was adopted right next to, we were in the same orphanage, but our families had adopted us literally right next to each other on the same bench, the same, like on adoption day.
Wow.
And she's very pragmatic about it too. Whereas I think I've always been a bit more like, oh, what about this? What about that? Like it could go either way. Whereas they're just like, okay, well that happened.
Mm-hmm.
And so either way, both approaches I think just are. I think it's a way of processing, and I think it's a way of understanding, really trying to relate how we are today to who we were then.
Definitely. I think you're so right when you say you have to take an approach that works for you. And for some people, it might feel more emotionally fueled at different points in their life. But if it doesn't feel like that for you right now, then that's also completely valid too.
Yeah. Yeah. Emotional or not, pragmatic or not, I think everyone's different, so we have to accept the ways that we process things.
100%. And do you feel like your mother really helped encourage you to kind of process things in a way that felt right to you?
Definitely. Processing for me, it was always through asking questions and maybe thinking of different answers. And that never did any harm to me. My mom always made sure that we were processing well, and she would always check in.
That's really great. And how would she do that? Or would it just be open conversation?
Yeah, it would just be open conversation. Honestly, I would approach her about it.
Great.
I was always that annoying child who's like, oh, like, why this, why that, what is that? Things like
child,
that.
Don't worry.
Yeah, no, I was extra curious, so if you know what I mean. She would talk to me about it every once in a while, but it was only because, I'd be like, hey, can we talk about this? Whereas, I guess that was worded funny, but I meant she would always be ready.
Great.
To talk to us about it if we wanted to.
It sounds like she fostered a really open environment.
Always.
And that's such an incredible thing. It's something that's just so important.
Yeah.
And even if you had, you might not have done, but even if you did have sort of more negative or challenging feelings around adoption, did you feel like you could speak to her about those?
Always.
Love that.
Always. I don't know how else to answer that question. Always.
She sounds like an incredible woman.
Oh, she is. She adopted us as a single mom, and it's just always just been the three of us and 2 cats, usually.
Love a cat.
Yeah, we do too.
Do you feel like there's ever any tension between the Chinese and US versions for yourself? And if so, how do you navigate that?
I think, again, where the question lies, am I Chinese enough? Am I American enough? The tension between it, I am starting to learn how to navigate a bit better. I always thought I need this 50-50 split. And, or at least I've always tried to reach that goal of mine when it simply, A, isn't necessary, and B, may not be possible. And I need to accept that. And I am starting to. But I think the tension has been a way to build off of that in itself is an identity for me, if that makes sense. That is my identity, that tension.
That's really interesting. I think it's a really, really effective way to word it, because I can imagine, well, as transracial adoptees, we are often sort of caught between these two cultures. Yeah. And that is often just where we're at, and that becomes our identity. But that's also just as valid. We don't have to just choose to be only Chinese or only American.
Yeah. Or try to be equally Chinese and American. It just doesn't make much sense.
And I know we talk a lot about feeling Chinese enough, but have you ever wrestled with not feeling American enough?
Dear me, I'm too American. Perhaps being too American, being too Chinese, it's never a bad thing. Mm-hmm. But I guess a lot of the insecurity about not being Chinese enough was feeling like I was too American.
Okay.
But that's never, again, that's just who I am. Mm-hmm. So it's not an issue per se, but I think circumstance unique to people in my situation.
Definitely.
In our situation, more or less.
Yeah, absolutely. And it sounds like, again, it doesn't have to be an issue or a problem, but it's something you're just aware of and constantly navigating.
Yeah.
And I know you said you feel like you're too American. What do you mean by that? Because you're wonderful.
I think as I've kind of adjusted in British culture, I think I've realized how overbearing and how loud Americans tend to be portrayed or just are. And so when I say too American, it's like I feel like emanating just loudness, being outspoken, perhaps having no cultural manners or awareness. I think that's a very exaggerated version or perception of Americans. But sometimes I do get a whiff of, okay, maybe tone it down a little bit. Maybe just tone it down. Yeah.
You're great just the way you are, so you definitely don't need to change.
Oh, thank you.
And I'd love to know how learning Mandarin has helped shape your identity.
I kind of picked it up again when I was 13, 14, when I was entering high school. I think at first I was trying to use it as a pathway or a key to becoming more Chinese, to becoming the Chinese person I felt like I needed to be. But now as time has passed by and my Mandarin isn't as perhaps advanced as I would like it to be, I still think it has helped me understand the culture of mainland China better and of the differences that I kind of embrace, if that makes sense.
It does. And what kind of differences are you thinking of?
Well, obviously the language barrier, but all these different festivals, all these different even the way people speak every day, these different mannerisms that are communicated through language have been really informational to me as I've been learning Mandarin. But yeah, now I don't feel as pressured to be like, oh, I have to learn this, I have to be more Chinese. If I'm struggling with this, I'm not Chinese enough. It's not like that, or at least it's not anymore.
I'm so glad to hear that. And it's really cool that you say it's not just about learning a language for the sake of learning a language, it's about learning a culture. And although it's something that maybe should seem obvious, it really isn't. And I think it's incredible that it's helped you connect with the cultural side of China as well as learning the language itself.
Can I just ask about yours
then?
Yeah,
absolutely. So in terms of learning Mandarin, yeah, so my mum taught me Mandarin. Well, context, my mum lived in Wuhan for a bit. I really should know the details of this. But she speaks Mandarin and she also teaches it back in England. So she taught me and a lot of my kind of Chinese adoptee cohort when we were younger. And oh God, we were such a nightmare to teach. I feel like none of us, well, I don't want to say this, but I feel like none of us particularly were desperate to be there. It's definitely encouraged by our parents.
It's like a Chinese summer school. I mean, not summer school, Saturday school.
Exactly. Yeah. So it definitely, we were not the best pupils at times. And I mean, God bless her. She got me through my GCSE with flying colours, which I'm so, so grateful for. But I remember when I was really little, she talked to me in Mandarin on the way to school. And I'd be so embarrassed. And I'd be like, oh my God, I don't want anyone to hear me speaking Mandarin because I'd feel, well, I suppose at the time I wasn't aware of it. But in hindsight, it's something that makes you different. And I guess as a kid, especially kind of growing up in quite a white area, you
don't want to
fit in.
You don't want to be alienated.
Exactly.
In fear of what other people will think of you.
And it's only really now I'm a bit older and I'm thinking one day I want to have kids and they're going to be half Chinese or maybe fully, well, actually no, they're not going to be fully Chinese because my partner's not Chinese.
But like, like culturally speaking, ethnically and DNA wise, yes.
Exactly.
But,
and
when you were talking about how we've really tried to understand more of our identity as we've gotten older, I mean, these are questions that we have to answer, that we have to ask, or not maybe answer now. Goodness, no, not now. But like, just like kind of, ponder on, like, what would my kids say? I mean, do I even want biological kids? Do I even want kids, period? It's all these questions. And if I were to, and if I will, then how will this work? And so I think as we're growing older, that's something that really shapes our identity.
Definitely. It really does.
Yeah.
And another thing that's quite interesting is just dating and relationships.
Oh,
I mean... What's that? Has that taught you anything about your identity and how you see yourself?
I haven't dated, does it sound weird? I haven't dated white people. To be fair, I haven't dated much really at all. I think growing up, I tried to stay away from white people because I was scared that that was another source of assimilation that was threatening my Chineseness.
So interesting.
And so with my family, I knew that I already had assimilated. And I, at some point, at some times in my life, had issues with that. And I still do sometimes. They're not they're not severe, they're not bad. And it's never, again, out of hatred. But it's more out of, what would have happened? All these different options that I'm trying to see. But now I think I'm comfortable enough in my identity that if I do date a white person, I think it's a testament of how comfortable I am in myself because it shouldn't be an issue.
That's so interesting because I feel like I've almost done the opposite in a weird way because I remember the first date I went on was with a Chinese guy and for some reason I just had this like internal discomfort around it and it was nothing to do with him because he's such a lovely person and it also might have been because I was young and awkward as hell.
I'm still awkward.
Same. And then I remember like later on in life thinking, well I say later on in life, maybe when I was like 18, 19, I think I said to someone, I don't know if I date a Chinese guy, which looking back I'm like, that is a terrible thing to say. Like, what is going on?
I said the same thing. I said I wouldn't date a white man. Either way, it's problematic.
It's interesting to look at it from both sides. And what I think is really interesting about what you said is that you didn't want to date white guys because that would take away from your Chineseness. Whereas I think perhaps I had the fear if I do date a Chinese guy, then that takes me away from the comfort of feeling like almost like a passing white person. And does that make me more different? And does that make me stand out? And that's what I didn't want, maybe.
I've heard people also say like they don't want to date or at least adoptees or people who perhaps struggle with a part of themselves because it makes them feel like they're not enough of that identity when their partner or that person, the other person in that relationship is. So it feels like they're not enough of a Chinese person or that they're not enough of, I don't know how to describe it, but do you understand what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's almost like how am I going to be enough for you? Which I also found very interesting. I've never felt like that. But yes, there's so many different ways of thinking about this.
For sure. I think it just goes to show everyone has such a different feeling around it. And yeah, so do you mean in the sense of another Chinese adoptee might date a Chinese guy and then they might not feel quite Chinese enough to be part of that family, and they're thinking, do I reach the sort of standards of Chineseness that the parents are expecting?
Yeah. Well, my friend back home, one of my really good friends from high school, who's also a Chinese adoptee. At the time, she was dating a Chinese boy, and he's pretty Chinese, pretty mainland Chinese. And she met his parents, and it was just it was stressful, and I think, depending on how the Chinese family is, and I can even speak about this, my high school boyfriend was very mainland Chinese, and his family was too. But it's a struggle, definitely, trying to bridge that cultural difference, especially when it comes to respectable elders and respecting elders. Western culture also has its own way of doing that, but it's different.
So how did you navigate that? Although navigate the trickier part?
I think I just enjoyed it.
Good.
I think I was very lucky. My high school boyfriend's mother was very accepting.
Great.
She was a bit more unconventional. And my friend wasn't as lucky per se with that. But she was so welcoming.
Great.
And like always trying to include me. So.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah.
But it's interesting you say that's unconventional. And do you think within other families it might be more of a challenge?
Yes, definitely. And we were kids back then, and I'm still a kid now, but I mean, we were kids, when things get more serious and if I'm in that situation again, I think I'm going to have to think about it.
That's completely understandable.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry that your friend had a bit more of a challenging experience. That must have been tough.
Yeah. But she got through it.
Good.
They ended up really liking her at the end, so.
Oh, I'm so pleased. That's great. Well, what does being Chinese mean to you today? Do you feel like it's changed a lot from when you were younger, or is it something that's just constantly evolving?
Yeah, I think going back to the idea of I need to, be more Chinese, I need to be more American, or I need to, I don't know if I can like somehow quantify it, but I need to almost exchange my American parts to be more Chinese. I don't know how to describe it, but I think I accepted that if I'm forcing it, then it's not going to be authentic. And if I'm forcing it, then is that really who I am? Despite what I'm saying now, I was always pretty confident in myself. I was always very grateful to have the life that I have and to just be myself. I was never afraid to be myself, whatever that means. But I think being Chinese now is embracing this tension. Because again, it's unique to myself. It's unique to every adoptee, to every Chinese person, what being Chinese means to them. So again, to reiterate this, for me, it's the back and forth and letting it flow, without putting these, limits on myself or expectations.
It's a really beautiful way to say it. And you're right, it is so important to just embrace whatever version of yourself feels right. And to also embrace the tension, because it can be a really challenging thing to navigate when you feel torn between two cultures, or you feel, as we said before, it should be a 50-50 balance, or you should be doing more of this to be more Chinese, you should be doing more of this to be more Western. When actually, no, you don't have to give up any parts of either. You can fully embrace both in whatever way you want and just be okay with the fact that's going to change over time.
And just be me, like
just be yourself,
like just be me, like it's just easier, it's more fun. Life is way more fun this way,
for sure. I'd love to know how you reconnect with the Chinese parts of yourself. I feel like you've mentioned quite a few already, like language, but is there anything at the moment that you actively do?
I'm volunteering with the Chinese Community Center. Even though most of them are Cantonese speaking, it still is really nice to be with them and serve and help the community there. Also doing this, I think I've never come across anything like this before, especially with a British Chinese adoptee. And so speaking with you about these things and representing Chinese adoptees regardless of the adoptive culture that they're from, I think is key to really connecting to my interpretation of my Chinese identity and of Chineseness, which is ever growing and ever changing.
Absolutely. And it really sounds like finding community, whether it be other Chinese adoptees or the volunteer work you do or like going back to school. It really sounds like those communities have been such an important part of shaping your identity today.
Yeah. What about you?
You know what? I haven't for a really long time and I want to start now. I think, well, I've always loved Chinese food. So
yeah,
I think
that's so yeah, that's so real.
And I think it's important to start with things that just bring you joy. Whether that be music, food, you don't necessarily have to just wake up one day and be able to speak fluent Mandarin or be able to suddenly tap into the lived experience of someone who's grown up in China, because you can't.
Or even like Chinese dramas.
Oh yeah,
yeah,
that's a good shout.
Yeah, those are some of them are quite funny.
Yeah, I need to. You know what? I really need to check some out.
Yeah,
and I think, but now I'm really keen to start actively reconnecting.
Yeah,
so I would love to learn the language again. I'd love to learn to cook the food. So one day I can cook with my kids and do that. But yeah, I'm still navigating that and I'm still figuring out what gives me that sense of belonging when it comes to being Chinese. It might even be learning how to play mahjong. Something like that. I think
we should
really
learn together. We should learn how to cook and play mahjong.
Deal.
Yeah.
Done.
I'm saying we should.
100% in for that.
Yeah. But cooking and eating, that's a real one.
Definitely.
That is a real one.
And I think just finding these small ways to connect which bring you joy and make you feel more yourself. It doesn't necessarily have to even be about Chineseness. It could just happen to be about Chineseness, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, definitely.
And as you said, we can't force it. So just, I think for me, it's important to choose things that genuinely make me happy. And if that can make me feel a bit more Chinese, then that's kind of an added bonus.
Yeah. No, for sure.
Is there anything that you'd say to other adoptees who are kind of questioning their identity or where they might fit in their sort of Chineseness or Britishness or Americanness or wherever they might be?
I think, again, accepting your interpretation, your own interpretation of what being Chinese is without pushing yourself too far with these unattainable and unrealistic expectations. Remember to always know that that's just your interpretation. That doesn't make anyone more or less Chinese. Even Chinese people, it just matters how you perceive it and how you go on to live it, to make it a lived experience without shaming yourself or again making yourself feel like you'll never be enough. I think that's like the key aspect, and to really embrace everyone's different.
Yes, it's so true.
So there is no right way.
But as you said, even like everyone in China will have their own version of Chineseness. We as adoptees will have our own individual versions of Chineseness. And exactly as you said, it is about embracing your version and knowing that that's just as valid as someone who's lived in China or grown up in China. And it's just as valid. Yours is just as valid as mine and vice versa. It just and they're all going to be so different. And I think that's a really, really beautiful thing. As a couple of closing thoughts, where do you feel most at home in your identity today?
I think I feel at home with my family. I don't know how to describe it. I mean, I think when people think of comfort, a lot of people think of home and family. And within my own family and my own home, it was always welcomed and it was always encouraged, but never forced. I think that, again, emphasizing my own interpretation and my own feelings about my Chinese identity, or more or less American Chinese identity, more realistically speaking, it really stems from my home. And it's been amazing to just see how it's evolved and how much I've grown, how much my family has grown about this, with me, with this. And at home with my identity, food.
Love that.
And especially because my family, we're very focused on cooking and food and being together while celebrating culture, especially through food.
I think that's such a beautiful thing. Food really brings people together.
Yes, definitely.
And is there anything that you say to your younger self or perhaps to anyone else who shares our story?
I guess don't put too much pressure and don't make right or wrong answers because there aren't any. And if people say that there are, then don't listen to them.
They're lying.
They're lying. Genuinely. They're not in your shoes. It's, again, everyone's different. And so the right answer is however you feel most comfortable. That's what I have to say.
That's perfect. Well, Addy, thank you so much for joining me. It's
Thank
been such
you.
a joy to chat, and I really appreciate you sharing your story.
Oh, likewise. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Before we wrap up, I just want to say that conversations like this remind me how different all of our experiences as adoptees can be. There's no single way to navigate identity, culture, or belonging. And hopefully hearing different perspectives helps people feel a little more seen in their own stories. If this episode resonated with you, feel free to share it with someone who might need to hear it too. We post new episodes every other Tuesday, and you can follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Not Made in China Podcast. As always, thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.